Kale's 9, and the first several years we went to school, it was a struggle. It was a struggle for me because we didn't know exactly what was wrong. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring. And so the first thing I can say is that in the beginning, all the parents are going to be terrified. There is nothing more frightening than not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. It takes years to get a good diagnosis, and even now, we all know that the cerebral palsy, his diagnoses are just labels they had to put on him. They don't really know why. They don't know if the seizures will stop or get better or worse. They don't know. And that's a scary thing, and I will admit it took me years to come to terms with it. And in the beginning, I was frantic at the teachers because I wanted him to get better. And, the first teacher we had was so fantastic. She helped me stay calm. She was so patient with me, with the process, with everything. And it was great. And then teachers leave, you get new teachers. We've had teachers who didn't like the fact that my son requires pretty much one-on-one care. There has to be an aide with him at all times. And he was by far the most disabled child in that class, and she didn't want to deal with him. She said he was disruptive. And they basically made up the fact that he was too ill to be at school, which was untrue because he still has the same diagnosis and he's been happily in school for the last 7 years. So just didn't want to deal with him. And I understand there's more than just him to consider in the classroom, but it's important to find that balance to make sure everyone is getting what they need. Because those homeschool programs is, if you're lucky, 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. It would have been better for me to pull him for a month while he was just so unstable. We've also had some really great experiences. The school he's in now, he's been in for 4 years. The teachers are amazing. We send a notebook back and forth every single day. And so they can communicate with me. I can communicate with them. Little things. Hey, he's running a fever. Because something like that can greatly affect a disabled child depending on their disability. And, just making sure that they know just the little things. He was up really early or, stuff like that. It helps a lot. That's been, I think, my favorite thing that we do within the school. Another really important thing is to be flexible. Be flexible with everybody, yourself, the students, the parents, because every single disabled child is so different. I don't care if they have the exact same diagnosis on paper. They are very, very different. And there is no set thing that will work in this situation. There just isn't, There never has been. I don't think there ever should be, honestly, because, you can't do that. You have to find new and innovative ways to do everything. I mean, I learn something new every single day about dealing with this. And sometimes things get bad. Sometimes Kale will be out for a long time, but it's always so important he comes back because most disabled children backslide so quickly. He loses, I'd say, a quarter of what he learns every year over the summer. But most of the teachers don't want to bother with the summer program because it's 2 hours a day, 2 days a week. But something's better than nothing.
What, check out the special services that he receives besides just education.
Well, we have caregivers come in the morning and in the evening just to help with getting up, getting dressed, getting fed. He's still in diapers. He doesn't walk. He doesn't talk. I guess I should have explained that earlier. Yeah, he doesn't walk. He doesn't talk. He's nonverbal. You can learn what he wants just by getting to know him. We are working on communication, but it's slow. He's physically capable of walking, but it's not a practical mode of transport for him yet. He's stuck crawling like a toddler gets stuck. So that's kind of where he's at. The caregivers come in because if he's having a bad day, it takes 2 people to wash his hair. And he's getting so big now, I can't hardly lift him.
Mm-hmm.
He's 4 feet tall almost. It's getting to be kind of a nightmare. And we have a wheelchair that's great for a toddler you can carry around, not so much for a child who you want to stand and scoot the chair up to their little butt and make them sit.
Mm-hmm.
But you only get a new chair every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with his bed. His bed, fortunately, is an adult-sized bed, but the mesh enclosure, they start to wear out, and those can only be replaced every 4 or 5 years. You know,
So OT, PT.
he doesn't do private OT or PT anymore, or speech. We do everything with the school, and I work with them myself because we have had just too many people. Nobody is willing to conform to a single method of anything. The speech therapy was where it was the most obvious. You know, we was at one point learning 3 different methods of communication. Something with a block, the little talkie buttons, assistive, I don't remember what they're called, and sign language. He lacks the fine motor skill for sign language, so how do they expect him to turn a 1-inch block so that the right word is facing up? I mean, that just is complicated. That would be hard for a toddler, you know, to learn at the same time as trying to learn sign language. And so we pulled him out of all the private therapies until I can find someone who is willing to accept the school as the primary. And I've interviewed several, but you wait 6 or 8 months on waiting lists for open appointments. Then you get in, and usually something I schedule 6 or 8 months out never happens. It doesn't happen that way for us. Yeah. If Kale gets bad, I don't go. Even if he's okay, if I don't get to sleep at all, I don't go. We don't schedule anything past 3 or 4 days out. If it can be avoided, because you can't. You know, I can tell you I'm gonna come, but it's a guess more than a commitment. But it's easier once you accept that.
Anything else that you would specifically like to tell a future educator that needed to understand a parent or understand a child with a disability?
You have to be patient. And you have to be willing to sometimes kick us in the butt a little bit because we need it. You have to be open to not necessarily being the only person who has input in this situation. You know, the situation with the physical therapists and speech therapists right now. If someone would bend, we could be getting more services. And you have to, no matter what, you have to laugh and you have to smile and you have to make every single day a joke in some way or another. Because I will admit, it's very sad sometimes, especially when kids have things that can kill them, and we're very blessed in that way, that we don't, Kale won't die from this. But, and so sometimes it's just, I look to them to keep me moving forward when I want to throw in the towel. I always have, and I think a lot of parents do, because we don't have a teaching degree. We don't, we are at home doing this because I promise you, if you're doing this right as a parent, you have nothing else. If you have a disabled child, you have no career, you have them, and that is it. And it becomes your whole world, and it's really hard not to think that you're failing just because you don't do anything else. This is it. This is all you have. This is all you become, and it's amazing. I am exhausted 90% of the time, but he is the greatest gift God has ever given me. He is, proves the existence of it.
Good stuff.